your body has this assembly of proteins called the inflammasome that turns itself into this sphere that signals to turn on inflammation. This is what is the precipitating event to something like joint pain or something that is like what we think of as mental illness, which is really a neuroinflammation, or even neuropathy starts from inflammasome activation. And what's been shown in a lot of scientific studies is that the cognitive loss and neuron damage in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's dementia goes through inflammasome signaling. And if you prevent the activation of the inflammasome, then you don't get cognitive loss at all.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All right, we're back with another episode of 10,000 Miles. Today's guest has already exceeded my expectations because Dr. B, Annalise Barron, and I chatted for a few minutes before the podcast. Dr. B, I created this little script, and I normally just go shoot from the hip, but I think what you're doing and the way I was introduced to you warrants me to actually read something that I put together. So bear with me. Let me go through this. But today we're going to dive into a topic that really, really affects every single person listening in some way, shape, or form, whether you even realize it or not. I mean, and the topic is inflammation. And inflammation is the thing that no matter when people are talking about health, even at the very layman's terms, let alone the level you're able to talk about it, everybody understands inflammation at a very minor level. But the depth of the havoc it causes in your body, in your health, in your mind is beyond what I think anybody really understands. You've probably heard the word thrown around everywhere. It's tied to brain fog, joint pain, fatigue, autoimmune diseases, even Alzheimer's. Okay? But what's it actually mean? And more importantly, what can we really do about it? There's a growing movement of people here who are trying to change how we eat, and sometimes in dramatic ways, like yours truly adopting a carnivore diet. And we're going to get into carnivore. Dr. Barron is a carnivore herself. We'll tell you about all her experiences much longer than I am. I've had about an aggregate of 2+ years on carnivore diet. My longest run was 18 months. And it was the best feeling looking I've ever been in my adult life. So instead of debating headlines and argue on social media, I wanted to bring on someone who actually studies the immune system. And I saw Dr. Barron on Dr. Chafee's podcast, where Dr. Chafee talks about carnivore pretty exclusively. And you see him with his shirt off and he's ripped like a giant Bruce Lee, and he's in good shape and he's very articulate. And so he's been somebody I've been following. But when I saw your, maybe lack of any other term, testimonial backed by science, I was immediately intrigued. So I reached out and Dr. Barron was kind enough to come on. Dr. Barron's an associate professor of bioengineering at Stanford University. Her research focuses on innate immunity, host defense peptides, and how our immune system protects us and sometimes harms us when it gets out of balance. She's studied everything from antimicrobial resistance to neuroinflammation and the biological pathways that are connected to diseases like Alzheimer's. And again, we're going to come back to that. I keep pausing on that because you're going to hear a lot about it. But today, more importantly, I'm going to try to do my best to help Dr. Barron break this down in plain English so people who don't maybe watch 50, 100, or 200 podcasts and information and try to learn the science can take this back and go, okay, now I get it. And I hope to inspire people to take that deeper dive today. Dr. Barron, what is inflammation really? Why do so many people feel chronically inflamed today? How does the science, or rather, what does the science actually say about extreme dietary approaches like carnivore? Dr. Barron, we're going to get into that. And what practical steps can be taken every day for people to help improve their immune health without turning their life completely upside down? So I'd love to start at the beginning. Dr. Barron, how did your journey start? And how did you get into studying the immune system, and where did that all begin?
Thank you so much, Vic. I'm excited to be on your podcast, and hello to your 59,000 subscribers. So I'm delighted to be here. So I am trained originally as a chemical engineer, and that is a really rigorous degree in engineering where you learn mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and most particularly methods of problem solving, defining problems, and really applying a really good logical protocol to defining the problem and then getting all the information you need to solve it and solving it. So it's extremely practical approach. And the beauty of chemical engineering is those skills can be applied anywhere. Well, I did both my undergrad, University of Washington, finishing 1990, and then I did my PhD at UC Berkeley. And actually, when I decided I didn't want to do sort of conventional chemical engineering, which would be designing chemical plants, that sort of thing, refining gasoline. I mean, I can do those things. I learned how to do those things, but I decided I was more interested in biotechnology and medicine. So starting with my PhD, I became an expert in biological molecules and analyzing them and understanding their properties and interactions, and also an expert in soft matter, which is things like polymer solutions and colloidal particles, etc. I did a lot of kind of inventive stuff, like trying to make neat biotech gizmos, molecules, assemblies. And so my first, say up until about 2011, 2012, my publications were in this area of biotechnology.
Okay.
And then I decided, no, as I got deep into this one project that we've had in the lab is trying to take natural innate immune defense molecules called host defense peptides or antimicrobial peptides. The best example in the human body, the one I love the best, is called LL37, which was discovered sort of around 1990 in Sweden and then has been extensively studied as an anti-infective peptide that's natural to the human body. For instance, if I put a little bit of bacteria on your skin, within 3 minutes, just that area would be flooded with this peptide and it would kill the bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very responsive, fast acting. That's really the virtue of the innate immune system is it's defensive, it's fast acting. It tends to be less specific because, it's kind of the soldier on the wall, right? It's guarding your mucosal barriers, your skin, your eyes. For instance, LL37 is practically the only thing protecting your cornea, your eyes. There's no antibodies, in the eyeball around the cornea. That's all protected by the innate immune system. But I want you to keep in mind, how often do you get an eye infection?
Rare if ever.
Rare if ever. And that's true for almost everybody in decent health, right?
Wow.
So the thing is, the first principle I'd like your audience to understand is that the innate immune system it's like that iceberg under the surface of the water. It's just massive in terms of its influence by numbers, because it's all your skin surface and it's all the, your eyes, your neurons, especially, your sinuses and your mouth all the way out the other end, which is really in some sense the outside of your body, because the outside world does impinge on your gut, for instance, right? Based on what you eat. And so the innate immune system has been less studied on one hand, because in some sense it's sort of less elegant because it's less specific. And, scientists today, they love these super specific T cells and B cells. Those kind of cells are considered very sexy in science. But, the innate immune white blood cells are ones that you would have heard of less, neutrophils, macrophages. Yes. But, the numbers of neutrophils that your body makes every day is like 80 billion new cells released, from your bone marrow of monocytes, macrophages, neutrophils. They are so important because they are so numerous, and they are really your foot soldiers, unappreciated. And the reason they're unappreciated is because they do their job so well, right?
Yeah. And so you started down this path, right?
Yeah,
of really studying this, from this angle.
Yeah. And so then I started to learn about the innate immune system, and I shifted around 2010. I started shifting. I got interested in Alzheimer's disease because I realized that this one particular host defense peptide discovered in Sweden, LL37, I looked at its structures and amino acid sequence, and then I looked at the structure and amino acid sequence of the Alzheimer's associated amyloid peptide called A beta. And that was the one that forms plaques in the brain. A beta peptide, it's called. And it just so happens those two peptides are about the same exact molecular weight, opposite charges. I literally could look at their amino acid sequences and I could see that they would bind to each other just based on all my biophysics knowledge, biochemistry, biophysics. So I looked at the two peptides. I happened to have like a light bulb moment at about 2:30 a.m. on February 9th of 2010. I mean, I know exactly the moment I
I
had the
love it.
breakthrough.
Yeah.
I was reviewing somebody's proposal at 2:30 in the morning for a grant review panel the next day, and I realized these two peptides had to bind to each other, and there had to be a connection between them. And so I started looking into it then, and that has culminated now 2026. So it's 16 years later. I think this journey where I first delved into these peptides and then into their natural functioning, and then to the disease process of Alzheimer's disease, more recently Parkinson's and glioblastoma. And now I'm getting interested in the connection to what we call mental illness, like anxiety, depression, bipolar, OCD, etc. I don't really think that's sort of mental illness. I think those are all driven by the same disease mechanism, which absolutely manifests as inflammation, neuroinflammation. But you have to dig deeper and say, and this was your question, where is the inflammation coming from? And how can we live in such a way that we will minimize it without ideally having to take any pharmaceuticals of any kind? So we might take some supplements.
Can you do
But
me a favor? Break down when people say they're inflamed or they have inflammation. It's a term everybody uses. Well, I have inflammation. And maybe they have a swollen joint or something is inflamed by raw definition. What does inflammation actually mean?
okay, so this is really something we've been thinking about very deeply in my lab lately. Your immune system is perfect. It's there to make you your best, but you have to provide it with what it needs and the environment and the resting time and the healing time, etc., and the right food. And you cannot be putting in inputs that are not supportive of innate immune system balancing. Inflammation, if we're coming back to the innate immune system, there is a whole complex pathway by which inflammation occurs. Have you ever heard of the inflammasome?
I have not.
Okay, so this is what we're getting really excited about right now. So there are many different insults that can create the assembly of this thing called the inflammasome, which is this spherical ball of three different self-assembled molecules. And it's results in, an amplification of signals that create inflammatory cytokines. What's a cytokine? It's a signaling protein. Reactive oxygen species, problems with autophagy, infections of any kind, physical injuries, burning or wounding, all of these things that are perturbations to your system can activate the inflammasome. So the inflammasome, you can think of like its pieces coming together, and it makes a sphere composed of three different molecules. And then it's like every individual molecule that makes up this sphere can send a signal to turn on inflammation. And the inflammatory cytokines that get turned on by the inflammasome are interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 8. And those drive, for instance, Alzheimer's, but they also drive joint pain. They also drive, how do we know if someone's inflamed, for instance? And those of us who are experienced carnivores know this. You can see it in someone's face even, right? So people that are being strict with their carnivore, their face will look more lean. And I don't even look, by the way, as good as as I have when I'm being really strict with carnivore, because, any deviation where you're consuming sugars and carbohydrates has an effect on this process. And let me talk about something that people don't realize.
By the way, just that's the first thing to change for me. And
Sugar.
so when I kick in the carnivore gear, the very first thing to change is my face.
Yeah, you can see it
immediately. And I'd like you maybe as an example, and for anybody listening, go back 6 episodes right around the holiday time and look at my face. I thought it was allergies. I did an episode back in December where I was swollen like a tick, right? I was, and it was incredible. And I'd look at it and I go, and I have this saying now as I'm getting on in my age, I'm like, I used to be worried about what I looked like in a picture or this, that. And I'm like, this is what I look like. It's like, takes a lot of stress off of everybody. Hey, Dad, we took a picture of you. Is this one okay? This is what I look like. I don't care. But I'm watching, since I kicked back into my carnivore life, and you go back over the last 4 to 6 weeks and you look at my face, it's the first thing to change, the very first thing. And I can see already in myself, and I compared to pictures of my 60th birthday when I was in full swing, like hardcore carnivore, I'm back. Right? Like my face is like coming back very, very quickly. My skin, my appearance, the circles under my eyes. I heard you say something, and I'm going to drop this in here. I heard you say something on Chafee's podcast about your gum health.
Yes, that's
okay.
critical.
And that rung my bell, because I have been telling people all the time, when you go to the dentist and they're checking for recession with that little gauge, and they're going 2, 3, 1, like 1's the best, 5's the worst. Oh, Vic, 4, right? And they go through every year or maybe twice a year and they check it and they mark down your gum recession. Well, after about 8 months of my first carnivore journey, I went in and she's like, 2, 1. She's like, wow. She goes, what are you doing? And I said, why? She goes, I've had to take some of these measurements over. Like you were a 4, almost borderline 5. You're like a 2, 2.5 now on this one. Your gums are healing.
Yeah.
And I said to her, she goes, are you water picking more? Do you floss more? I said, I'm not water picking more. I know I should, but I have a pretty good dental hygiene routine. I go for professional dental cleanings 4 times a year.
Very good.
And she said, what is it? And I said, it's carnivore. I've changed my food. My gums are healing. And so anyway, the face, yes, the gums, I'm sorry, but you hit on something that I know are the key benefits to the carnivore thing. Anyway, sorry, we're talking about inflammation.
You brought up exactly the right subject. So it turns out that your periodontal health is really the key. In a way, it's like your canary in a coal mine. You can look at your gums and you can floss and you can know, are you on the right track? Do you need to change things? Because your gums should not bleed whatsoever when you floss. 0. You should have 0 blood. Now, look, I can tell you, until I went carnivore, I thought everybody's gums always bled every time they flossed, that it was normal. But that is actually a state of pretty profound polymicrobial infection of the gums. And here's the thing. If you have a polymicrobial infection of your gums, it's also in your sinuses. It's also in your nerves. It's all the way down your gut. And it's the reason for the inflammation. That is really what people don't appreciate yet. Even brilliant scientists who are working, for instance, on the power of the ketogenic and carnivore diet. So Georgia Eade, who's a psychiatrist at Harvard, and Chris Palmer, who's also a psychiatrist at Harvard. They're both interested in treating patients with a ketogenic diet. Georgia Eade is more carnivore. He's more sort of ketogenic. But they both say that, the ketogenic diet works by reducing inflammation and by healing mitochondrial function, right? That's the main thing you hear from almost everybody, right? It's considered, like they're going deeper if they talk about mitochondrial function improving. And yes, it does. So I'm not saying that that's not true, but I'm interested in going even further down to the root cause of the inflammation. And that is polymicrobial infection. And let me define polymicrobial. So these are more than one kind of microbe. So specifically, I became fascinated looking at the citizen scientists of the carnivore community, especially those that have given their testimonials on podcasts, such as No Carb Life on YouTube that Dave Mack runs.
Yeah.
He has more than 1,500 interviews. And then Sean Baker interviews people.
Yep.
Carrie Mann of Homestead How interviews people. And so I've just watched a million testimonials. And to me, I'm watching a case study and I'm learning because each person has struggled with different conditions. For instance, I saw one guy had almost whole body psoriasis since he was 15. It was so bad. It just completely ruined his life. I mean, a very handsome man, but just covered in psoriatic plaques for some reason. He was saying like, the pain and inflammation he was experiencing was just unbelievable. And, did carnivore. He had tried everything, of course, right? Tried keto first, got better, but didn't heal.
Mm-hmm.
Carnivore, it immediately started to completely heal. Within 6 months, his skin was virtually perfect, only one small spot. He was in tears talking about this. Now, why? And then there are 23 case studies on Dave Mack's channel, No Carb Life now, where people have taken severe multiple sclerosis. There's different tiers of severity in multiple sclerosis, where you have like first line, second line, and third line drugs, right? Different categories of drugs. And so it's pretty typical if people have had multiple sclerosis for say 7 or 8 years, they end up failing all the drugs, meaning they're no longer providing benefit. And they have the joint pain, the exhaustion, it's all kinds of problems, even to the point where people have to get into a wheelchair. People are having trouble communicating. One hand may become useless. These are all things I've heard on testimonials recently. 23 cases of people who were that bad. And some of them even at a relatively young age, like mid 40s and older people, and went carnivore and completely put it into remission. Meanwhile, mainstream medicine is telling every patient it's not going to get better. We can't cure it. All you can do is kind of manage your symptoms a bit with these drugs.
Treat it. Yeah.
Well, guess what? It is curable. I mean, it's not truly, the word cure is a tough one. It's not 100% curable in the sense that if you went back to a non-carnivore diet, it would come back. Now, why is that? Why does it get better? And why would it come back? And that is a disease which is characterized by neuroinflammation, right?
Yeah.
But multiple sclerosis, it's been shown at Stanford by their teams around the world. One team is at Stanford, is caused by Epstein-Barr virus. Now, most people don't know too much about Epstein-Barr virus, but they connect it with fatigue syndrome, right? Chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
Because Epstein-Barr virus has been known for a long time to be the cause of mononucleosis.
Yeah.
College kids and new recruits to the Army often get when they're, living in crowded conditions, right? Because EBV is very common, Epstein-Barr virus. Like by the time you're a grown up, something like 90 to 95% of people are carrying it. It's a herpes virus, of which there are 8 different herpes viruses that are endemic in the human population. I don't have them all memorized, but there's Epstein-Barr virus, herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, human cytomegalovirus, varicella zoster virus. Let me just focus on those 5 for now. And then I think the other ones are a little more obscure. There's like HHV6A and HHV7, and they're all associated with fatigue and sometimes flu-like symptoms, or in the case of HSV 1 or 2, they can cause occasional breakouts of cold sores, right? And okay, so pretty much I would say every human being that comes into contact with other human beings is carrying at least 4 or 5 of those. Oh, and varicella zoster virus causes chickenpox and shingles.
Okay. Wow.
So you've heard of that one. Did you have chickenpox as a kid?
I did. As a matter of fact, I think my mom might have taken me to a chickenpox party.
Excellent, because you know what? That is a very good thing to have actually had natural chickenpox as a child. Now, I do have a little ring scar on my face from that when I had it when I was 4. But, if you had natural chickenpox and then got through it, nobody dies of chickenpox, then you will never get shingles.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And now
that's what I know.
They're giving him chickenpox vaccines, but now they have bad outbreaks of
Yeah, they
shingles
get
with older
shingles.
people. So that's another thing. Dysregulation of the immune system, right? Okay, why does a non-carnivore diet dysregulate the immune system? And why does it end up causing mental illness and neuroinflammatory conditions and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's
Can you
disease?
hold that question for a second? I
Yeah.
want to come back to that, but we touched on something that I don't want to lose. And if I don't tap that brain of yours on this, I'm going to regret it. You mentioned something and you called it citizen science. And
Yeah.
I get it right at the core. I love it. And you being a scientist, which is why this is so interesting to me and I think to most. And I told you early on in our pre-recording session where I said, I have I'm very fortunate to have a lot of great friends that have a lot of intellectual curiosity. And it's great because we don't always agree and we discuss things and we debate and then we laugh when it's all over and it's fine. But I have one particular very good friend who's like the science guy. And he's like, show me the study, show me the clinical review, show me the blind study, show me the peer-reviewed data, show me all of that stuff. And I'm sure you subscribe to all of those things, creating a bed of validity. However, this whole thing about citizen science, because he said, I really want to buy into carnivore, Vic, but I just, I got a couple things here and there. To me, everything's anecdotal. And I say to him, hey, anecdotal is 1, 2, 3. I'll even give you a handful of times. I said, but when you have thousands of interviews with people who have achieved results, everybody from all the people you mentioned who have hosted thousands of people on their podcast, we left out Michaela Peterson, who was, clinically depressed, claims to have been, diagnosed bipolar, all of these things, and went on carnivore and went from being lost in a cloud to living and thriving in a very productive, happy life. Married, children, successful podcast. These are the studies, not in a controlled environment, and maybe each one of them could be called anecdotal. So who came up with citizen science? I love the term. How do you take your scientific brain and yet allow in the citizen science in everything you do? Because, traditionally you were probably classically trained in the science process. But how do you marry that with the sort of overwhelming evidence that comes from citizen science?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like it's because of watching all these podcasts and all these anecdotal stories on these, the podcasts I listed that have led me to a great discovery. Because here's the thing. I would say the person I think of who kind of coined the term citizen science is Dave Feldman. Have you ever
Oh, really?
interviewed Dave Feldman?
I have not.
He's amazing. So he's an engineer, an IT guy, just like you. Very cool. And he got interested in the whole LDL, HDL issue with carnivore because he was doing great on carnivore, but it made his LDL skyrocket. And then everyone's trying to put him on statins and all this stuff. Never go on statins.
I'm in that party.
Yeah. So anyway, so I actually invited Dave Feldman because I saw him on a podcast where he was doing actual scientific studies that he was crowdfunding, and he found a guy at, a grad student at Harvard that helped him crunch the data and publish it. And I actually invited him to lecture at Stanford in one of my classes.
That's great.
An hour-long lecture because I wanted the graduate students to understand, like, you don't have to be like bona fide to research something. All of us are incredibly intelligent. We all have our different, unique ways of thinking. Personally, I grew up in a blue collar family. My stepdad, who I grew up with, is a crane operator, union blue collar guy, but, grew up on a farm, just salt of the earth, the most wonderful, honest, kind, hardworking man. And my mother is a sweet, feminine homemaker who always stayed home. And I'm one of 10 children. And, I was the third oldest and most responsible for babysitting of those 10 children. So I grew up, taking care of my younger siblings. I have 7 brothers. So since and 6 of those are younger brothers. So on one hand, because I helped raise my younger brothers and I lived in a wonderful sort of very traditional family from Wisconsin, I'm super down to earth. And I'm an outlier in my family in the sense that most of my siblings were never interested in school whatsoever.
Okay.
And somehow I just loved it and burned up the track and went the academic route. My family still can't figure out like where I came from and how I'm, like how I came out of that family, and they just laugh, because, my brothers are like bartender, iron worker, professional snowboarder.
Yeah.
I think one grows cannabis, that kind of stuff, right? They're just totally restaurant work, dancing, that kind of stuff. That's my people, is just ordinary, smart, but, blue collar type of people. And so you learn to interact with everybody and to respect everybody's intelligence and their experience, and just be willing to listen to people and believe them, understanding that the power of citizen science is, for the most part, people are telling their story and actually, kind of being open about some things that people might consider embarrassing, like psoriasis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just so happy that they have gotten better and that they feel better. They want to share that joy. It's really a loving impulse that so many people have of wanting to help each other. And yet they don't have it. They're not making money. And even if you're a podcaster, it's not like you make so much money. It's still a service.
No Joe Rogan compensation here, Dr.
Exactly.
B. So
maybe someday, Vic, you'll be a Joe Rogan. I could see it. But, so there's a beauty in it that there's no conflict of interest when we listen to each other. And yet we all have come to realize over the last 10 years that the conflicts of interest in the medical community and the food, processed food industry are massive. Vaccine industry, massive conflicts of interest, just nothing but lies.
It's hard to,
we've been
you want to trust.
Lies.
Like, when we talk about medicine, you want to trust because we have evidence of things that have been created that have, you would have died from a cut without antibiotics. Like you would have, diseases where we've created vaccines where, polio and things like that really took hold. So you can point to these things that have worked, but if you're naive enough to think that it's a pristine operating environment, because anytime you put in money in the equation, money breeds and attracts corruption.
Exactly. And that's the key.
And it's unfortunate, but it's just a fact. You don't want to become an absolute, skeptic or pessimist, because you want to try to move the world forward. Later we're going to talk about the work you're doing, in hunting down what the heck is causing and how we can help people with Alzheimer's. But I don't want to start off as a skeptic of you. Like when I hear that, my ears go up, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and I'm like, wow, somebody really cares enough to work on this. Yeah, and by the way, I hope you monetize it, because if it works, great. I mean, that's how the world works. But what they don't know is how many hours and years you've grinded to be able to actually get down this path. Anyway, so basically what you're telling me is that there's just too much citizen science to overlook.
Yeah, you have to. So I would say that I think, because I work with so many brilliant colleagues at Stanford who are working on similar problems to me, right? But I can tell none of them are aware. They've mostly barely heard of carnivore at all. They will have heard of ketogenic diet. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've even tried it, but they haven't kind of used the citizen science community as a resource. And in a way, that's become like a superpower for me. So I was talking before about how on Dave Mack's No Carb Life channel, there are 23 people that put their multiple sclerosis into total remission. And if you watch those interviews, you'll see people cure everything. So every kind of inflammatory and bowel gut disorder, right? Yep. Which are also considered incurable. You can totally put those into remission, fix them with carnivore. Some people have to, like Michaela Peterson, some people have to really be strict and go all the way to lion diet, which is just salt water. Yep. Most people can incorporate eggs and some seafood. And by the way, Michaela Peterson, I mean, she is absolutely luminous. And she is an example of the power of carnivore if you start when you're young. Can you imagine if you'd known about that when you were 25?
I might even be more handsome than I am today.
Oh my God. I'm actually I want to do a do-over and start do my whole life carnivore. So what happens? How does multiple sclerosis get into remission? Since, as I was just saying, it's caused by Epstein-Barr virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. It's a little bit complex. So, and this is what I went through on Anthony Chafee's podcast. So I became deeply curious watching all these case studies of MS going into remission. And then the particular case of Mimi Morgan, who had Parkinson's disease. And
Okay.
she's, by the way, would be a great person to interview as well. And I can give you her email address.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So she's a very graceful, intelligent, lovely lady who lives, I think, in South Carolina. And she's older. She's like 72. And she went from sort of massively inflamed and overweight and not able to even walk upstairs to like just being like, she could be on the cover of Vanity Fair. She's so beautiful.
Wow. Amazing.
And she did that with Carnivore, very strict, and then a really serious exercise program. But here's the thing. Why would eating meat control an Epstein-Barr virus infection? That is a really important question because that's what it reduces down to.
Okay.
Because if you're putting multiple sclerosis into remission, then you've taken Epstein-Barr, which is a chronic herpes virus infection that you will never eliminate because you cannot eliminate herpes viruses from your body. They will always be there in your neurons somewhere waiting for you to not get enough rest, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll flare. So it turns out everything hinges on keeping your immune system on point, and carbohydrates weaken the immune system. And it's funny, this has not been studied very well. And I think that's because I don't know exactly why, but there's a really wonderful paper from 1973 kind of made the first observation that when you ingest simple sugars, right? So glucose, sucrose, fructose, and then I think they also did lactose. So they had human volunteers consume or drink 100 grams of sugar dissolved in water. And then one person had like 100 grams of orange juice, just straight orange juice. And then they did a blood draw 30 minutes, 1, 2, 4, and 5 hours after drinking the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And they extracted the white blood cells, the innate immune cells, at each time point.
Okay.
Those are called neutrophils. I talked about there's neutrophils, macrophages. Okay. Neutrophils function by eating viruses, bacteria, and fungi. So any kind of pathogen, so a neutrophil is like 5 microns in size, and a bacterium is 1 micron long and a half micron wide. So
okay,
you get your size scales, right? And a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. Okay. So basically, you drink sugar, and for the next 5 hours, your neutrophils don't work. Your immune system
shuts off.
Just shuts off. Now, think about how many times a day you ate something with sugar in it growing up.
Every minute
practically, right? Do you remember that? Like,
I sure do.
Because we know, those of us who are carnivore, that, bread breaks down to sugar. Potatoes break down to sugar. By the way, though, starches like potatoes, they didn't weaken the immune system as the same way as the simple sugar. So sugar really is much worse than, say, potatoes or rice.
And you're about to make the comparison from the glucose solution to the orange juice?
Yeah.
Was there any difference?
No, they all did it. And, in fact, fructose has the added problem that it can only be metabolized by your liver, and it creates fatty liver. So fructose fattens you like really potently for a very good reason, right? Because when does fruit ripen? September, right?
Yeah.
September, October. That's when the apples are ripe, usually. And then what's coming soon after? Winter. So basically, we evolved brilliantly so that when we eat sugar, we lay down fat like crazy so that we can survive the next, 3-4 months through the winter. But fruit is very dangerous for that reason. You just, I would say, I know some carnivores that end up adding some fruit back. And I do think, the fruit fibers, first of all, it's delicious, but it, I think it can have some benefit for your microbiome, but you probably don't want to have more than one piece of fruit a day. I don't have any, right? But I'm older. I feel like the older you get, the stricter you have to be.
You got to tighten it up. In full admission, I allow myself 2 handfuls of berries per week.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and I think you should.
And that's what I do. But you're right. In order to tighten it up.
Ice cream? Have you made Dr. Kiltz's carnivore ice cream?
I haven't, because, I'm looking for a lack of complication in my life. And I love steak. Love it.
Oh, I do too.
And my entire family, and my youngest daughter, Mia, will say, "What's for dinner tonight? Another slab of beef?" And I'm like, "Hey, not for you if you don't want it, but if you want to feel great, yeah, sure."
You want to be beautiful. That's what
exactly.
Well.
But sorry, go ahead. So here's the interesting thing. Sugar shuts down
the immune system.
Yeah. That I've never heard it put so simply like that before.
And then you put together what like Ben Bickman and Dr. Chafee said, which is also true. Everything everyone's saying is true. It's just all true at the same time, which makes it a little complicated. That when you ingest sugar, carbs, now your body is putting fat into fat cells, right? It's turning what you ate into fat. And so you can't burn fat if you have high insulin. So that's one thing, right? So we know that the ketogenic state is insulin lower because you haven't ingested carbs. And so you won't lay down more fat, but instead you'll burn the fat that already is on your body. So that's kind of the first step that we all got really excited about. Okay. But then the second step is it maximizes the strength of your innate immune system. Now you've probably heard of autophagy,
of course,
where your cells naturally kind of clean themselves out. All the mitochondria inside of the cell, if they've gotten a little bit ragged, they'll get either degraded and refreshed or repaired. Basically, we do know that 3 days of fasting drives autophagy. Like, you'll have a great autophagy as long as, I think autophagy starts after 16 hours of fasting, right? And if you will continue that and do a pure water fast for 3 days, your entire immune system will regenerate and reset. So you probably know that, right? Where your bone marrow will release a completely new set of white blood cells, fresh and shiny and ready to work perfectly.
As you enter autophagy?
And you will have entered autophagy at 16 hours.
Yeah.
I did a 40-day water fast in spring 2023, just only water for 40 days.
Okay. How'd that go for you?
It was a transcendental experience. It was very spiritual. I mean, it was partly because I just wanted to lose weight and I got impatient I felt like carnivore was too slow.
Okay. The longest I've ever done was 11 days.
Oh, that's amazing. I've
done 11 days, and I'm going to tell you a little funny story as a side note here. And by the way, for anybody who's listening, I don't, if you're interviewing for a new job during this process, don't tell people what you're doing. And so I had gotten a call on like day 7 in from a recruiter. I was happy where I was working, but I have a saying, take the meeting. Like, you never know what's, the world is knocking at your door, trying to present you opportunities. Listen, have a conversation. So I get on the phone with this recruiter. He's like, "Oh, there's this company. They're in Dallas. They're looking for A, B, and C. They think you'd be a perfect fit. I've had your resume for a long time. Would you like to have breakfast with the person tomorrow morning?" And right up, a mile from my house, there's a corner bakery. And they're like, "Oh, let's meet there." So I'm going to be there on day 8. And so I get in there, and this guy's got a full breakfast on the table, and he's getting ready to eat, and he wants to know if I want anything. I said, no, thank you. And rather than just stopping there, Dr. Barron, I go, no, thank you. I haven't eaten in 8 days. And so the maniac lights start going off. This guy's a maniac.
He thinks you're crazy, right?
He thinks I'm nuts. Like, he doesn't eat in 8 days, Yeah,
it's the best thing you can do for your body. And I really encourage everyone to do a longer fast at some point for spiritual reasons. But anyway, I'm, 11 days fasting. You probably lost about 12 pounds.
I lost 20 pounds.
20 pounds. I did. I don't even remember, but the combination of carnivore plus that fast, I lost 65 pounds, which I have kept off. And, it completely changed who I am.
Changes your relationship with food in a big way.
You notice that it changes, like being carnivore and zero carb, it even changes your disposition. Like you become much calmer and more mellow and really just a happier person.
We had to take a break, so here's part 2.
Yeah, you talked about your extended water fast that you did. You said 11 days, right?
Yeah.
And you lost 20 pounds. That's amazing.
20.
And I also have done an extended fast, which I did, partly because I was going through a very difficult time in my life and it just felt like the right thing at that point. This is back in March, April 2023. And I had lost somebody I was very close to, kind of in a, surprising way. And yeah. And it just seemed like it felt like the right thing to do at that time. And I did a 40-day water fast. Wow. And of course I lost weight. It was definitely, you'll lose weight even faster on a water fast than you will on carnivore.
Was it only water, just plain good old water? Was there anything in the water?
No, just water. And then I was taking electrolyte capsules because I don't like the taste. I don't like the taste of salty water, and I didn't know about elements in those electrolyte drinks yet. So I just did salt capsules. But, it got a little hard. My electrolytes ended up getting dysregulated or like the 37th, 38th day. And then I started to really not feel well. So I really had to stop at 40 days. But I think if you managed your salt well, like you can just drink pickle juice is a great electrolyte. I'm going to try that on my next fast. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, the pickle juice is my secret weapon for cramps.
Yes. Pickle juice is
secret weapon. Yeah. The very first time I experienced this, by the way, I was at a CrossFit gym. And there were 2 people in this evening class, and me, another person, and 2 trainers, and we had to do some running outside. And then after the running, we had to do some sled pushing. It was winter; it was cold out, and I'm getting gassed. And I sat down on a curb, and the ice cold curb shot that temperature into my glutes, and my glutes cramped so bad. I'm screaming! I couldn't believe it. And Ben, one of the trainers, goes, "I'll be right back." He goes running into the gym and he comes out with a little bottle of pickle juice. "Drink this." "What is it?" "It's pickle juice. Come on." And literally, as the last bit went down my throat, cramps gone.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just electrolytes are so important. And the weird thing I would say is, and it can be serious for your heart if the, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc., get out of balance. So
yeah,
I couldn't even, like on day 39, I couldn't even like hold down water. And that was because of the electrolyte problem. So I had to stop, right? I couldn't even drink water. But the good thing about the fast was, it's a very deep, spiritually connected state. Once you get deep into the fast, you lose weight, your body's like, repairing your cells because autophagy goes to max. But I want to point out something that really happened that happens during a real water fast. Number one, if you're truly on a water fast, then your body will spare your muscle. So it has programs embedded where you will not harm your muscle. You'll just burn fat until you get to some really low percentage body fat before you would touch muscle. So you can fast a pretty long time and won't make you weak subsequently. The other thing that your body does when you fast, and this was a 2016 Nobel Prize, where for the, kind of uncovering and studying the process of autophagy, a Japanese researcher, basically when you fast, your body will turn on programs that clear all of your intracellular infections, whether they're viral, bacterial, or fungal. And all of these pathogens are able to invade your cells. And in particular, they're herpes viruses that are endemic to the human population, that almost everybody has 4 or 5 of these. And they cause all kinds of neurological issues. And in fact, most chronic so-called idiopathic diseases, so that means that medicine doesn't know the true cause of the disease, idiopathic diseases, I believe the root cause of those are these chronic viral infections. And so carnivore is the best way to kind of keep your immune system on point and suppress these infections. You cannot get rid of herpes virus infections. So listing them off, did we go through those before? Varicella zoster, which is
We
the,
did.
we went through those all, right? And EBV, HSV, HCMV, and there's like 3 others that are less well known. Well, your body will basically do the best it can of clearing those out and suppressing the numbers of those pathogens, also fungal pathogens and bacterial pathogens when you fast. And then you can do like a low carb diet, keto, carnivore to kind of keep things in pretty good shape. But probably one, like yours, kind of 7 to 11 day fast per year is a really good idea. And it'll also clear early cancer.
Can you explain
Fasting is
autophagy
powerful.
to folks?
Yeah. So in autophagy, your cell, it's this complex collection of different organelles, they call them, that function inside of cells. So you have the nucleus, right? Your genome is all wrapped around histone proteins. It's actually spooled and tightly condensed in the nucleus. Then you have the endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus, which are these layered complex membrane structures around the nucleus. You have mitochondria throughout the cell, which have the sort of size and shape of small bacteria, and they function kind of like bacteria. They produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy currency of the cell. It's really best for your body, especially your heart, your brain, your nerves, to run on ketones. Your brain does use glucose, but all of the glucose your brain needs will be produced by your liver when you're in ketosis, like while you're fasting. The best person to read for fasting is Jason Fung. He's one of the people that are, he's got great books you can get on Amazon called, the obesity code, the cancer code. He's wonderful on fasting and uses it therapeutically. And I just today watched a podcast with Dr. Sean Baker, and an oncologist who now uses fasting to treat cancer, and especially fasting right before chemo. And she talked about one patient that just did a total water fast and cleared their brain cancer. They had like inoperable brain cancer. So it's possible. It will always help. And the reason is that, all of those organelles will get repaired. Your mitochondria will get repaired by this beautiful automated process while you're fasting. Then your body goes into deep immunological repair and regeneration. And in fact, your whole immune system, of course, will kind of refresh itself.
So when I first went on my carnivore journey, I received all the typical pushback from the people who have been educated on the norms. Now, I'm known to be a bit of an extreme guy when I decide to do something. If I climb an anthill, I'm going to Kilimanjaro next, so that's sort of bit my personality. But I get met with all the very traditional training. We know that, breakfast being the most important meal of the day was a marketing deal. We come that out, cereals and grains and oats and things like that all came from, Kellogg's and all of these other companies, and they built up a lot of issues. And there's a special on Netflix that talks about how us dropping grains and wheat and flour into areas of Africa where people had no diabetes at all, but we thought we were helping them survive, caused an epidemic of diabetes and poor health. And there was a whole, I'll have to look it up and link it in the description section. So, but the thing I get all the time is like, no vegetables? None? How can that be good for you? No fruit? None? How can that be good for you? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I have seen, I've really delved deep into the hundreds of testimonials that are on the No Carb Life channel. And I've seen a lot of people on one hand say they start out ketogenic, including low glycemic, non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, salad, avocado, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very common for people to go from standard American diet, and then they'll try a ketogenic diet and they'll see a lot of improvements, like less joint pain, they lose weight, a lot of things get better, but they'll have much more profound healing and total remission of their existing conditions when they go carnivore. Speaking of the chronic, herpes virus infections, there's a great interview with Vida Evanson on No Carb Life channel where, she just had like a lot of she had like 3 different kinds of herpes that were just troubling her. And she'd been vegan for like 6 years, raw vegan, she thought that was bad. Someone told her it was, but it just never went away. It never got better. And for her, that was a problem. And, for her, she cured it with carnivore. It took 6 months, kind of like the guy who had psoriasis.
Okay.
And then she loved Caesar salad. So she made like a totally, primo, all the best ingredients, Caesar salad for herself, and thought, I won't even put the croutons. I just want the rest of it. And she then had a huge outbreak again. So there are some
one
people,
Caesar salad.
One Caesar salad from scratch. The thing, and that's just lettuce and there's not even that much in it. So some people's immune systems, really can't handle the vegetables. Now, on the other hand, let's talk about digestion. Do we need fiber for good digestion and regularity? No, absolutely not. Because, there's hundreds and hundreds of carnivores that just eat fatty meat and eggs mostly. Beef, bacon, butter, eggs mostly.
Yep.
And actually their digestion is better than it ever was when they were eating vegetables and grains.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that have inflammatory bowel disorders, they can't tolerate vegetables. I personally don't think vegetables are good for us. I don't. I know that sounds crazy, and especially, did you see that President Trump just signed this thing, breaking the hearts of everyone who was hoping things were on a good track, which will allow them to continue spraying Roundup all over our croplands, and made it a matter of national security. So, I'm sad that, that big industry, big ag managed to get that protection for themselves. That's very sad. And I'm sure that RFK Jr. is throwing a fit on our behalf. But, if you don't eat plants or grains, you don't have to worry about ingesting
the
Roundup.
Chemicals.
Yeah.
Well, this is the dialogue I have with people all the time that go to Europe, spend time in Europe. When I went to Italy, over 10 years ago on my first trip, and I had a new relationship with food when I was there. Tomatoes tasted like tomatoes when I was a kid.
Exactly.
The fruits tasted like all of these flavors came back and they hit my brain and started launching dopamine. And I was having flashbacks to being 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, living in Brooklyn, where we bought all of our fruits and vegetables from a very big produce, it was a big store, but it was only produce.
Right.
All the fresh stuff was brought in and the butcher had the meats. And even what I really loved about being in Italy was I would see all these little farms and little mini ranches that would serve just a handful of places in the community, whether it be people or restaurants. And Annalise, you'd see their busted up pickup truck pull up to the front of a restaurant and the chef come out and grab all the things he or she wanted. Nope, don't want that. Yep, I'll serve that to my customers. And the food was fresh. I think maybe earlier we were talking about, the blueberries now. They look like grapes.
Yeah.
In what universe do
taste the same?
They don't. And so to your point, I don't think the fruits and vegetables in and of themselves are the tip of the spear of the problem. It's how we have GMO'd them, cultivated them, cared for or lack of care for the land and the soil that they grow in. And so now we ingest all of that stuff and our body is reacting very, very poorly to it. We have not evolved. The human species is still not evolved to be able to handle that. Disease and illness is up, catastrophically. But, strawberries are great. Yeah, strawberries are great if I'm now doused with poison.
Exactly. So in this country, I would say in the United States and in Canada, I don't know about Mexico, but we get a lot of our produce from Mexico. The things we're eating a lot of people are reacting badly to. And you and I, that's another good thing about being, over 55. We remember a time when people were a heck of a lot healthier and you could see it in their faces and their bodies. And if you go back and you look at pictures of the 50s and 60s, people looked even better. Like in
They
the
did.
50s, people were pretty much all trim in the 50s and early 60s.
They
Like it
did.
was natural. And I was an exchange student to Italy when I was 15 and a half. So I lived
Oh,
within a
wow.
family.
Lucky you.
Oh, it was wonderful. And it was exactly that way when I went there. They had a butcher shop, a bread shop, a produce shop, a fish shop, whatever you wanted. It was a small family business. And the food was so wonderful. The tomatoes they have. So everyone says they can go to Italy, eat pasta and bread, and lose weight. So we just need to obviously clean up our food supply. But since it's not done yet, we cannot eat those things if we have sensitive constitutions. And I think most of us do. We just don't realize it.
We have the challenge of being able to supply an abundance of food for a population I don't think anybody anticipated ever having in the world. Like, let's just take the United States as an example. You have to feed 350 million people on a daily basis. If you chat GPT right now, the number of chickens we eat in a day, I think everybody's mind would be completely blown.
Yeah.
And then you're like, where are all these chickens coming from? How do we raise that many chickens so fast? How frequently? You walk into the supermarket and rotisserie chickens are pouring off of the hot plates all over the place. Every place you go, they have cooked rotisserie chicken. Even Costco sells them as a lost leader. So you walk to the back of the store, and by the time you get to the register, you spent $200 at Costco for a $4.99 chicken, right? So it's bait, but I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole on
those
this.
rotisserie chickens, they put all kinds of bad stuff on them too.
Bad stuff.
Flavor them.
Bad stuff. That's why they
I
taste so good.
I love those. Yeah, they taste great, and they're engineered to do that. But it's better to get your own organic chicken and bake it in the oven.
I just had I had a breakfast, by the way, in California at a nice hotel last week when I was out of town, and the eggs came out, and they were the most beautiful, deep orange, and I even really, I tasted this fantastic difference. And I said to the server, I said, where the heck did you guys get these eggs? The closest I've ever seen to eggs this rich looking was when I was in Mexico City. They said, oh, we get our supply from a farm up north, and they deliver here once a week. But you go to the supermarket here, and you can get some nice pasture raised brown eggs, and they're golden, but these were like blood red orange. And boy, they were delicious. They were unreal.
Different. I raise chickens too. I'm so committed to this carnivore lifestyle now that I bought a ranch and I'm raising cattle. So.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I'm just getting started. So I bought it in July of 2024.
Okay.
With a good friend who's an experienced rancher. So far we only have 23 cows.
Okay.
But,
it's good. Congratulations. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like
I have a guy coming on the podcast. He's from Texas here. His name is Texas Slim. And he runs this thing called the Beef Initiative. And he's been all over the world. He actually just acquired beef.com, and he's all about small ranch beef production. And he travels the world, and he just came back from South America. He's be on in a few weeks, I hope. We're working through his schedule. He travels a lot. But this guy's going to make for great conversation. He's talking about how we mass produce beef, and we got to get back to small ranches.
Yeah.
Where much like the food supply works in Europe, everybody's got their zone. They have, responsibility and protocols and things they do, because he believes that, meat is the number one nutrient that we need for life and survival. But you can do bad things to it. You're not raising the cows right. You're not processing it appropriately. So he's got the 360 on it. So anybody listening, look out for Texas Slim while we're on the carnivore thing. You mentioned something earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, beef prices are up really well. So if anybody in the audience can afford to, buy like 175 acres plus, that's how my place is 167, and I have 10 extra acres kind of seeded from a neighbor. And we think we can run probably 40, 50 pair, which means mother and calf on this land. Right now we have, 20, we're at 23, and we're going to be building the herd. These are Aberdeen Angus. So, it's it's a wonderful life if you can manage to be out in the country a little bit.
I bet it is. We have a little small oasis in West Texas that's like a little outpost getaway for us in the midst of thousands of acres. We found 4 acres that had water and power on it.
Fantastic.
And so we made it as a little, like a glamping site, I guess you would call it, because I got Starlink out there and we've got beautiful water, electricity, and we've got travel trailers out there, but they're parked and they're hooked up to a 1,000-gallon septic. So we've got all the modern conveniences, but when you look up at night, there's nothing but stars. It's fantastic. And the adjacent properties, all cattle. And they come up to the fens and these big giant black Angus, and they move around. This guy's got about 3,000 acres. And sometimes they're in the west field, sometimes they're in the east field. Then they're back in the tank drinking, and they're doing all these things, but it's kind of neat. Hey, you mentioned something earlier called the Inflammasome. I heard it talked about once before. You refreshed my memory, but I heard it talked about more as like a marketing term than actually like a clinical term.
So basically, when your body's responding to some kind of an insult, often this will be some kind of an infection, or it can be reactive oxygen species from too much inflammatory stimuli, or it could be an injury or burning or something. Basically, your body has this assembly of proteins called the inflammasome that turns itself into this sphere that signals to turn on inflammation. So this is what is the precipitating event to something like joint pain, or something that is like what we think of as mental illness, which is really a neuroinflammation, or even neuropathy starts from inflammasome activation. And what's been shown in a lot of scientific studies is that the cognitive loss and neuron damage in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's dementia goes through inflammasome signaling. And if you prevent the activation of the inflammasome, then you don't get cognitive loss at all. You don't get neuron death. You don't get the inflammation. Okay, how do you inhibit the inflammasome? Well, guess what? A ketogenic diet produces a molecule called beta hydroxybutyrate when you get into ketosis. So whether you're fasting or whether you're doing a pure carnivore diet, beta hydroxybutyrate is a potent inhibitor of inflammasome activation. So that's why you'll often hear people saying who have really torn up menisci in their knee, like, so they have a lot of knee pain or hip pain, they'll go on a strict ketogenic diet and they'll report that their pain is gone after 3 days. Okay, that's how long it takes to get into deep ketosis. Now their knees are still torn up. Why is their joint pain gone? Because beta hydroxybutyrate, inhibits inflammasome activation, so that whole inflammatory cascade does not happen. So even before somebody's lost weight and taken the pressure off their joints, the pain's already gone. So there are other things that inhibit the inflammasome, like the amino acid glycine is a great inhibitor. So you can just take glycine when you take your supplements. That'll help.
Okay.
And there's also, basically you can go onto your favorite AI and say, what supplements that I could buy on Amazon are inhibitors of the inflammasome?
Hold on. I'm going to do that right now.
And you should do that. And there's like 4 or 5 that you can buy. And I didn't mention this when we were talking before, because you said, oh, I hope you monetize your discoveries, right? Well, guess what? I'm co-founding a new startup company called BevyMe.com. It's going to make a drink.
I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah. So we're going to start selling a drink in early April, which is going to be like a little whiskey shot, 1.7 mils. And you would just drink 1 a day. It replaced 30 capsules. And it's basically everything over the counter that inhibits the inflammasome, and a bunch of things that strengthen your immune system so you can keep those pro-inflammatory pathogens like tamped down. So it'll strengthen your immunity, prevent you from getting respiratory infections and any kind of infection at all. And it should directly inhibit the inflammasome. We have 4 things in there that do that. and it's going to taste really good. I think it's like blueberry pomegranate, and just, chug it.
Where will it be
And
available? Via your website?
yeah, definitely the website. And if you want to get the press releases, you just go to mybevimi.com, which is Bevimi. And
Okay.
bevimi means drink me in Italian. And because
Okay.
I speak Italian, I was an exchange student there and I loved it there. So we were thinking of Alice in Wonderland's little bottles, because it's going to be a
Okay.
little
Neat.
bottle, the one that said drink me, but drink me
Huh,
was
look at
taken.
that. That's great.
Yeah, drink me was taken. So we picked the Italian word bevimi. So
Hey, I looked up,
are you
I
Italian?
chat my grandfather from Italy. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
cool.
grandfather's from Italy, second generation on my dad's side. My mom's from England. So I'm first generation Brit on this side. But
That's a
I've
good
been to my grandfather's hometown, and it was just so charming. Still only 5,000 people 125 years after he left,
Oh, that's wonderful. Italy is wonderful. Italians are wonderful. And they've been badly influenced by America too, where now they go to big grocery stores like we do. So those little
Yeah.
family shops are not as common anymore. But I think, when we talk about, we need to re-engineer our whole society to go back to the way we used to live. We need to
Yeah.
decentralize,
We do. Hey, let me tell you the results from ChatGPT when I said,
Yeah, what does it say?
specifically the NLRP3 inflammasome, which is one of the main drivers of chronic inflammation. It says, here are the things you can take. Curcumin.
Yes.
Directly inhibits the NLRP3 activation. Omega-3 fatty acids, reduce inflammation activation, and macrophages. How does that pronounced?
Macrophage. Yep.
Macrophage. Okay. Reversitrol, berberine.
Yep.
Quercetin.
Yep.
And then emerging but promising was EGCG, green tea extract,
Yep.
vitamin D, zinc, melatonin.
Yep.
And then there are some lifestyle factors that they say can suppress that the inflammasome. Intermittent fasting,
Exactly.
ketogenic or a low carb diet, exercise, cold exposure, adequate sleep, and weight loss. You know what? I'm hitting a lot of those right now. And I'm super low carb. I exercise. I'm going back to cryo, but I was a cryo guy for a very long time. I really focus on sleep. I'm a unfortunate but fortunate CPAP user.
That'll go away. Actually, go away with Carnivore. Give it a little time.
I hope. Well, in a way, I hope it does. It's not weight related. I have been.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah, please do.
CPAPs. So I have a really good friend, absolutely gorgeous man. And he's been married to his wife since they were high school kids. And he's a terrible snorer, right?
Yeah.
So he had to do the CPAP, and she couldn't sleep in the same room, which is, sad. So he wanted to fix that snoring problem. And he had already tried like keto, carnivore and stuff. Like, he's fit.
Okay.
So he actually went to a surgeon. They sawed his skull in half, like right here, and shifted his skull.
I know. They talked to me about that. I was like, no.
Oh my God.
No.
His face and his head swelled up like a pumpkin. But you know what? He recovered. He's back to normal, and it did work.
I'm not signing up for that. Okay.
Me neither.
And I'm not signing up for the other thing that they implant in your chest and run a wire up into your throat.
Oh my God. I don't know.
The machine is whisper quiet, and it's so quiet that I was taken for dead the third night I was wearing it because I was so quiet. We'll see. I'd like to see what happens this time.
How long did you say you've been carnivore? How long?
Well, now I'm only back on it for about 4 to 6 weeks, but the longest run I went was about 18 and a half months, and I still snored after 18 and a half months. And I was
down. Did it
get
better at all?
I don't know, because I'm so
because you were using your CPAP machine.
I'm so disposed to just getting in bed and putting that thing on. It's
exactly.
being in the cockpit of a plane now. I just lower the glass and I strap in and I'm ready to go.
But I'll bet you if you give it a few years and you're good with your whole lifestyle and your diet, I bet it'll go away.
There's an easy test for me, by the way. And so I know how I'm going to be able to tell. On the rare occasion I get tired in the afternoon, if I take more than a 10 to 15 minute, just like first level resting power nap and I sleep, if I actually sleep and it's more than 30 minutes, I'll wake up with a massive headache and a sore throat from not being on the CPAP. So these are good, quick ways. I know if I can start napping, taking the old Italian siesta, sort of, the 4 o'clock, little 2 to 4 o'clock, little rest time. So you're charged up and everybody's eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night. But that'll be a way for me to test. So as things start improving around how I feel, but I'll tell you, just in the past 4 weeks, I don't have any need for naps anymore. My energy level's through the roof. I told you, go back 4 or 5 episodes. You'd be like, he's a different guy. He already looks like his 10-year younger half brother. It's just incredible. It's just such a great feeling. Hey, let me ask a question. I have a question here I've been dying to get to. How does inflammation affect your focus and mood?
Okay, so this is really important. So I believe that mood is very much affected by by the immune battle that's going on in your neurological network in your brain, right? This is all connected.
Yeah.
So, recently it's been shown that a ketogenic diet can put into remission even very severe forms of mental illness, anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar disorder, even schizophrenia. Okay, that's an extreme example when someone has a diagnosed mental illness, but it also connects to focus, mental clarity, and calmness of mood for those of us who don't have an actual condition that limits our ability to function, like the named psychiatric disorders. I think it's all a continuum, and it's all related to the extent to which your body has inflammasome activation. And there's a reason why going into ketosis is so powerful for calming the mind and enhancing the focus. And let me say one thing, water fast is a time of extraordinary mental and emotional clarity as well. And that's why kind of a spiritual experience, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can actually slow down the processes and perceive things more accurately and with perspective. So at this point, I've been carnivore for 6 years, and I can tell you my whole persona has completely changed, where I'm no longer like emotionally reactive. I can be calm. Nothing gets to me or perturbs me anymore. Even things that really are, say, a serious matter that needs to be dealt with, I can just feel calm and do it. So
and you attribute that to the carnivore?
I attribute that to carnivore and intermittent fasting, because I try to eat, at most twice per day.
Okay.
And these are carnivore meals. So I think intermittent fasting is powerful, but then I think people should find that in the inflammasome inhibition. So, if they wait in April, they'll be able to get the little shot and just, get it all over at one quick drink, or you can buy all the capsules and take those.
Tell us more about what's in this and what your goal is with this.
Well, I'm actually not allowed to disclose all of the ingredients yet.
Okay.
But it will be on the label when it gets commercialized. We're just in the midst of protecting the formulation right now. Yep. But I'm going to tell you, it contains a number of ingredients to strengthen your immune system so that you can basically prevent neuroinflammation by inflammasome activation. And then it's going to have natural botanicals, a number of them that also inhibit the inflammasome. So it'll be basically everything you need to be on point, sharp, focused. And really, the goal is to prevent cognitive decline and brain fog.
What if somebody's already experiencing some cognitive decline and brain fog?
It will help.
Potentially diagnosed as early onset dementia.
It will help. You like what we call mild. So they definitely should try to walk at least 7,500 steps a day. Ideally, not just walking around the house, but like go outside, get in the sunlight if there's any where you live. And in fact, there is incredible power in the infrared light that comes from the sun, and that goes through your clothes. So just try to get out in the sun and get the full spectrum sunlight in the IR. Walk your 7,500 to 10,000 steps every day, or most days that you can. drink a lot of clean water, try not to drink alcohol if you can, save that for only a few special occasions. And a lot of people don't drink it at all. I'll drink a beer now and then, or a glass of red wine now and then. And, and then eat as low carb as you can. And if you're really serious, like if I had early onset cognitive decline, I would be strict with carnivore and walking and, just get anything stressful out of your life if you can.
Yeah. I ask this because I have a lot of friends and colleagues that are around my age, late 50s, early 60s, that are starting to see this in their parents, if their parents are still with us.
Exactly. In
And
fact,
it's becoming
my
very, very common. Very common. Like, never heard of this stuff before, Annalise.
I
Never
didn't.
heard of this stuff
This is
before.
another thing, like when you and I were, say, in our 20s, old folks were not having so much of a problem. So, I also, certain vaccines, non-live vaccines, which is pretty much every vaccine they give in this country, can dysregulate your immune system and make viral reactivations more common. So really you can think of the problem that causes, initially it'll be brain fog, and then it'll cause memory loss, and you'll see personality changes, mood changes. And if those are the earliest symptoms of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's anyway, like mood changes, those are really due to viral reactivations, which are due to a weakened immune system, which are due to under-exercising, eating carbs, not getting enough sunlight, not sleeping well. I think about what they feed these old folks, in rest homes. It's like so
Slop.
important it's slop and it's filler. And, like your Nana that you love, you should be having a ribeye every day. That's the best thing you can do for them. But how many of them, by the time you get to that age, you don't have a lot of money usually anymore because you're on a fixed income.
Yep.
Right. So those are the people like here on my ranch, like my neighbors are like 89, 92, 88. So I give them eggs, because they're all on Social Security. Eggs are like $11 a dozen now.
It's crazy. Still a cheap meal relative to how many eggs you eat at a meal. I'll eat 3 eggs in the morning, and even at $9, I'm like, oh, that was pretty cheap breakfast.
Yeah, not too bad.
That was good. Not too bad. Hey, I wanna use the last 3 minutes we have wisely for a couple of quick questions that are going to create some nice little clips for us. So if you just amuse me here a little bit. Let's see. If someone feels inflamed, like they get this puffy joint pain, feeling, what are some simple practical things they should think about doing? And I know we went through a lot of them, lower the carbs, all of that, but what's the one thing you think they should do first?
Yeah, the one thing I would do is just cut out the grains and the alcohol and the fruits. And you can and do intermittent fasting, like stuff yourself with a beautiful steak, right? Steak and eggs. And then try not to eat for the rest of the day. Like just eat all at once and drink water. And that will help. That will help a lot. And then if you don't see your face kind of coming back to what you like it to look like, then go for a real water fast for 3 days. You may be fighting something, and that's going to strengthen your immune system. So you got to help your body fight off the inflammation by fasting and doing keto.
And when you talk about intermittent fasting, are you like a 16-hour fast believer? Where do you think that autophagy starts to kick in?
Yeah. So after 16 hours, so if you do one meal a day, and then if you need a snack at a different time in the day, just make sure that there's no carbs in it. Because it's still it's what they call, carnivore is really what they call a fasting mimicking diet. So you don't have to be hungry, but you do have ketones that will inhibit the inflammasome.
Last thing, give us the 2 minutes on what you're working on for your big surprise for the summer.
Yeah. So I'm starting working with this great investigator who's the chairman of microbiology and immunology at Stanford, Bill Robinson. He works on multiple sclerosis. So my hypothesis for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is that it's viral reactivations, which start from oral infections, Candida albicans and Porphyromonas gingivalis, which are a fungus and a bacteria. Together, they turn off antiviral immunity, and then you get the neurological effects of these viruses reactivating. So We're going to look now at the possibility that the exact same disease mechanism I just described is causing multiple sclerosis, lupus erythematosus, and rheumatoid arthritis, which I believe is going to be shown to be the case. So then you'll have pretty much all those chronic diseases that we think of that we don't know the cause of and we don't know how to treat. They'll be explained, and then we'll know how to prevent them. And in fact, this drink we're going to sell at BevyMe should then, we're going to run a clinical trial starting in April with 150 participants that have mild cognitive impairment. But, I think that the same treatment, because it inhibits the inflammasome and strengthens immunity, should also work not only for preventing Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other kinds of dementias, but also MS, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. And it's not pharma, and it will be relatively almost free compared to what pharma charges you.
Amazing. Dr. B, I can't thank you enough for all of your time, all of your spirit, your personality, your education, your wisdom, and really your whole demeanor. It's been a pleasure. I always tell people, what do you love most about the podcast? How many episodes you in? I said, well, I'm over 100 now. Well, what can you tell me is better and different? I said, whatever number episode I'm at, I'm that many more episodes smarter than I was that many more episodes ago. You've given me a lot to think about. You've taught me a lot, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Vic. This is a great show, and let's keep in touch.
Will do. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.